Hey friends, welcome back to Homestead on a Prayer. Today we are out in the garlic patch and we are going to be talking all about garlic scapes. Now garlic scapes are one of those things, if you haven't grown garlic before, you might be thinking, what in the world are garlic scapes? I don't know anything about those. And those are one of those kind of special things that is pretty much kind of reserved for gardeners. Now you might be able to find some at your local farmer's market. If you have like an upscale local farm store or something along those lines, you might be able to find some. But for the most part, they're very seasonal and they have a very short season. And so your best shot of being able to get some garlic scapes for yourself is to grow garlic. Now the first thing to know is that in order to get garlic scapes, you need to grow hardneck garlic. Garlic comes in two varieties, hardneck and softneck. And softneck garlic does not produce scapes. Now as you can see, my garlic patch is a little crazy and beaten down right now. We had some pretty serious rain last night, and so it's kind of, some of it's really laying down. Now, so garlic scapes. Look at these kind of crazy curly guys coming out of the middle of the garlic. This is what's called a garlic scape. Basically, this is garlic's version of a flower. If we let these go, they would eventually stand straight up and produce basically like a garlic flower. I think that I might let one go so I can show you what it's like. But for the most part, we want to cut those off for a couple reasons. The biggest reason is that if your garlic is putting its energy into producing scapes and basically trying to make a flower and ultimately garlic's version of seeds, it is going to be taking energy to do that it would otherwise use to create a bigger garlic bulb for you. So by harvesting your scape, you're allowing your garlic to develop a bigger bulb. The other reason is that they are delicious. So if you let your garlic scapes grow a little bit, you're gonna get all kinds of crazy curly, they're pretty fun looking actually. Now people have different opinions about the best time to harvest a garlic scape. I like to harvest them when they have about completed one circle here. So like this one here, this one's about time to harvest. I might let it go another day, but we're actually going out of town for the weekend. So I'm going to come through now and I'm gonna harvest all of the ones that are close. Now you can see some like this here. This one's a newer scape. You can see it's a little more tender. It hasn't even really started its circle yet. I'm gonna leave this, and this one should still be good when we get back. The main issue is that you don't want to let them go too long. I'm looking, I don't think I have any here that are really too long. But if you let them go too long, they start to get woody. They're not gonna be as delicious. And the earlier you harvest them, the more energy they put into the bulb. Now there isn't any harm in letting this one go a couple more days. There's still gonna be plenty of energy for the garlic bulb. And this one is really tender. That has a ways to go. These scapes, I'm just going to take a pair of kitchen scissors and I'm just going to snip them off as close to the leaves as I can. You can just snap them with your hands if you want to. I just find it easier and a little more precise to use scissors. So you're just going to take your scissors. I like to cut it at an angle, but that's not strictly necessary. And then look at that. We've got our first scape. So this little part right here is what would turn into the flower. So I'm just going to go through this patch and I'm going to harvest all the garlic scapes that look ready to me, and we're going to let the others go for a couple more days. Look at this great bunch of garlic scapes that we got. Now this is just the beginning. This is probably less than half of the scapes that I'm going to get from my garlic patch. So we are definitely going to have an abundant harvest this year. Now, because I'm going out of town, I am not going to have a chance to do anything with these yet. I just wanted to harvest them before we go, since we're going to be gone a couple days. I wanted to make sure that they didn't get overgrown while we're gone. So I'm just going to stick the stems in a jar of water, kind of like you would some cut flowers, and these will be fine for a couple days just sitting on my counter. So here's my beautiful garlic scape bouquet. So these will be waiting for me when I come home. And over the next couple days, I'm going to show you guys exactly what we do with garlic scapes. If you guys have any other recipes for garlic scapes, drop them in the comments below. I'm going to show you guys what I do with my garlic scapes, but there's so many other great recipes out there that I'm sure I would love to learn something new, and I'm sure that everyone watching this video would too. So check out the comments and we will find some great new recipes together. I'll meet you guys when I get back from camping, and we are going to do some fun stuff with these garlic scapes. All right guys, I'll talk to you later. Hey guys, we're back from camping. Our garlic scapes have been here waiting for us. I went out and harvested some more, so I've got most of the scapes that we're going to have here in the kitchen waiting for us. So now we're going to talk about 3 easy and delicious ways to eat your garlic scapes, and I might throw a little bit of a bonus in there too. All right, so let's take a look at our scapes and then we'll talk about the recipes we're going to make. Okay, so here's our garlic scape harvest. You can see I have them split up into 3 different piles here. In this jar here, these are the scapes that we harvested together a few days ago. These scapes are going to be dehydrated into garlic scape powder. We'll talk about that in a minute. This pile here I just harvested today. These we are going to turn into a delicious scape pesto. And this little pile over here I'm going to saute up for a delicious side dish for our dinner tonight. So let's get started with our scape pesto first. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take these scapes here, and I'm also going to take the scapes that we're going to be dehydrating. I'm going to cut them up into about 1/2 inch to 1 inch long segments. I'm going to take these that are destined to become scape pesto. I'm going to pop them into this food processor over here. And then I'm going to dice up these other ones. These are going to go on dehydrator trays. So I'm going to go ahead and get these chopped up, and I will meet you back here. Now I realized as I was getting ready to chop that I said this in the wrong order. We actually want to put these scapes in the food processor first because these are the ones that are going to be dehydrated. The other scapes are going to get mixed with all kinds of other ingredients to get turned into pesto. So we want just the plain scapes to get dehydrated first. Now with these scapes here, we're going to cut off and discard this little end that's been sitting in the water, partly just because it's been sitting in the water for a couple days. We don't want any kind of sliminess. And also it could be getting a little bit tough on the end. So we're just going to discard these and compost them. Now when you chop a scape, you can see how they're kind of curly and crazy and they want to wiggle everywhere. They're a little bit challenging to chop all at once. So I find it easiest to chop them individually. It's a little more time consuming, but that's what is easiest for me. So you see this little light green part here? This is what would become the flower. And then if you go further, there's this long skinny green part. This part's a little bit tough. So we're going to not include this in our scape powder or in our pesto. So we're going to take all of these off and we're going to set them aside for a different use that we'll get to in a minute. Some people also choose not to use this flower part here. I find it still has lots of flavor and is nice and tender, so I do include that in both my pesto and my scape powder. So I'm just going to go ahead and get these all chopped up, and I will meet you back here once we have a nice pile of chopped scapes to work with. Okay, so you can see we have a nice pile of chopped scapes. Now these are the ends that are a little bit tough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put them in this freezer bag. I'm going to freeze them. And the next time I make chicken stock or vegetable stock, I'm going to add these in for extra flavor. So they're a little bit tough to eat, but they do still have some good flavor. So we're going to freeze those, and those will give us some nice extra flavor on soup for the winter. So this is kind of our bonus. It's not really even a recipe. It's just our bonus way to get some extra flavor and goodness out of these garlic scapes. Okay, so these are the scapes that are going to be dehydrated and turned into scape powder. Now, if you are going to dehydrate them to use in larger pieces like this, like you wanted to put them in soup or whatever and just use them this way, you would just keep them like this. I am going to make scape powder with them, so I'm going to throw them in my food processor before I dehydrate them. That will chop them a lot more finely, and that will allow me to dehydrate them for a much shorter amount of time. Okay, so as you can see, my food processor here is kind of running on life support. We've got this nice stylish duct tape handle. Anyway, it has still been working fine. It's just having a little bit of difficulty. So we're going to take these scapes and put them in here. We're going to pulse them until they're pretty finely chopped. We don't want them completely pureed or pulverized, but we want them in smaller pieces because they're going to dehydrate much more quickly that way. So this is what we want. See how it's pulsed into smaller pieces? They're not as thick anymore, but they're not completely pulverized. We're going to take these chopped scapes and we're going to put them onto our dehydrator trays and get them dehydrating. Okay, so this is my dehydrator here. You can see I have a few different types of trays inside. These are the basic trays that come with the dehydrator. These have pretty big holes in them, so these are not going to be ideal for our garlic scapes that are chopped up pretty finely. So what I have is these mesh inserts that kind of go over the trays like this, And this will probably be good enough to contain the pieces. Now keep in mind, as they dehydrate, they are going to shrink, so they will be a lot smaller than they are right now. I do also have these silicone inserts as well. These are great for making fruit leather, but what I'm probably going to do is line one of my trays, probably the bottom one, with this one. And then that way that will catch any little pieces that happen to fall through. If you don't have either of these inserts, you can just line your dehydrator tray with parchment paper. That will work just as well. All right, so let's get these trays filled. This will be the bottom one that I'm going to line with the silicone, and then I will line a second one with this. I'm going to try to spread them out because I have the space. I'm going to try to spread them out pretty sparsely. That will also help them dehydrate more quickly. Okay, so our next Scape recipe, and probably my favorite Scape recipe, is Scape pesto. So here are the Scapes that we chopped up together. This is probably a little more than a cup, maybe a cup and a half of chopped Scapes right here. You don't have to be super precise. This is kind of a to-taste recipe. So here's probably a little over a third of a cup of Parmesan cheese that we grated. We're gonna add that in. Here's about a third of a cup of pine nuts that we toasted. When you toast these, you just want to keep an eye on them because they burn pretty easily. You want to toast them only until they're fragrant and starting to get golden brown. You can see some of that nice coloring on here. And then you want to let them cool for a little bit so that they don't like melt your cheese and cook all your other ingredients. So we're going to add those in here. Now I will say this Scape recipe is delicious, but it is pretty zesty. So if you want it to be a little bit more mild, you could certainly saute your garlic scape. So it's not really spicy, but it's got kind of that garlicky kick to it. So if you saute some of your garlic scapes ahead of time, that will tone it down a little bit. Now garlic scapes are a little bit milder than the garlic bulb. They're a little bit sweeter than the garlic bulb, but they still do have some zip to them. They are garlic after all. So we just put a couple tablespoons of lemon juice in here. As I said, no need to be super precise. We just kind of throw things in and then you can adjust it as you go. Just a little bit of salt, just enough to just really bring out the flavors. A couple grinds of black pepper. We're gonna chop this up a little bit and then add the olive oil in just a minute. So let's chop this up and then we can kind of get a gauge for how much olive oil we're going to need. So periodically, when you're processing this through a food processor, you're going to want to scrape down the sides of your processor bowl with a silicone or rubber spatula. That's going to just make sure that everything gets evenly incorporated. So you can see right now, that's probably not quite as fine as we want it. So we're going to chop it a little bit more, and then we're going to start adding our olive oil until we get a nice smooth paste. So we're going to start with about a third of a cup of olive oil. So I'm just going to measure out a third of a cup here. You can see I have a 2/3 measuring cup. I'm going to fill it up about halfway. And we're going to gradually stream this in as the food processor runs so that it gets incorporated evenly in our pesto. And then we're going to give it a little bit of a taste test and see if we need to adjust anything that we've added. All right, let's take a look and see how it is so far. That looks pretty good. I'm going to want to chop it up a little bit more, just get it a little bit more incorporated. But we're definitely on the right track here. All right, that looks pretty much perfect. I'm gonna pull it out so that you can see how it looks, and then we're going to do a little bit of a taste test. See how nice and smooth that is? Now this is all personal preference too. If you like yours chunkier, feel free to chop it less. If you like it smoother, keep it going longer. All right, so let's do a little taste test and see how it is. That's really good. I think I'm gonna add just a touch more salt, but really, that's pretty close to perfect. So my favorite way to eat this recipe is just to have some nice home-baked sourdough bread, toast up a slice of bread. I'm a little decadent and I put a little slathering of butter on it first and then put the pesto over it. You certainly don't have to do that. I mean, there's plenty of olive oil in here, so the butter's just an extra indulgence. It's also delicious tossed with pasta. You could top a baked potato with it. Pretty much any way that you would use regular pesto, you can use with this, but the flavor is quite a bit different. Now, some people do use basil leaves along with their scapes. They kind of use the garlic scapes to replace just the garlic bulb in a traditional pesto recipe. That's a great option also. I like this because I make plenty of traditional pesto later in the year, so this kind of gives me something different and a little more unique. Now also, there's quite a bit of this here. This is probably not something that my kids will really eat a lot of, so I don't know if my husband and I are going to go through all of this while it's still good. So what I'm going to do with any extra, I'm just going to put it in an ice cube tray and I'm going to freeze it. And then once it's frozen, pop the ice cubes into a freezer baggie. And then we can just pull this out anytime in the winter we want a little bit of a fresh taste. So I added a little more salt, gave it another taste test, and now it's perfect. So I'm just going to scoop it into our jar, put it in the fridge, and then that will be a delicious snack for the next, I'll probably keep for about a week or so in the fridge, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a couple weeks. Hey friends, so it's actually the next day. We're going to check on our garlic scapes now that we're in the dehydrator. I think they're probably done. So I ran them in the dehydrator yesterday for 6 hours on about 122 degrees. If you have like a fruit and vegetable setting on your dehydrator, you can use that. Mine doesn't have one, so I just do about 122 degrees. Mine goes in increments of 9. So I can't be all that precise with the temperature that I choose. So I checked them after 6 hours and they were not quite done. They were still a little bit flexible. So I put them in for another 2 hours. I think that they're done now, so let's take a look. So you can see that they've shrunk down quite a bit. They're a lot smaller than they were because all their moisture content is gone now. So what we want to do is find a bigger one. I don't think I have any really big ones on this tray. I'm going to grab another tray. So see, if you find kind of a bigger one, a bigger piece here like this. So what you want to do is you want to see if you take the ends and bend it, does it bend or does it snap? We're looking for a snap, which we have. So that means this is done. So I'm going to get all of our scapes out of the dehydrator now. And what you want to do is put them into a coffee grinder. Now, I do not recommend using the same coffee grinder you use for your coffee. I have a separate coffee grinder that I use just for this kind of thing, basically just for grinding up dried herbs and spices. So I'm going to grab that. We'll get all of our scapes into the grinder and we will grind it up into a nice fine powder. Now when you're done grinding your scape powder, and it's pretty fine powder, you want to wait a minute before opening this to let it settle down. I have opened it too soon before and ended up with a cloud of powder in my face. But take a look at that. That is really fine powder. So I have here an Old Spice jar that I've saved to repurpose like this. So we're just going to take a funnel and carefully pour the scape powder into our jar. So there we go. Now it doesn't make a lot. You saw how much space those scapes took up before we dehydrated them and then before we ground them into powder. So now we have this really delicious scape powder to use over the winter, just a little bit of homegrown goodness to get us through the winter months. This is really delicious. It's got a little bit of a similarity to garlic powder, but it's a little bit sweeter, it's a little bit milder. So it's a really great alternative. It's great to use on scrambled eggs. You can mix it into like meatballs, meatloaf. I mean, you can sprinkle it on all kinds of stuff. Anything you'd use garlic powder in, this is a delicious, not even really an alternative because it's still garlic powder, but it's made from the scape instead of the bulb. So last night we made some of the scapes as a really delicious side dish with dinner. I'm going to show you a little clip of that, but it's so easy. Basically, you just melt a little bit of butter with some olive oil in a pan. You cut up your scapes, and then you're just going to saute them on about a medium heat, sprinkle a little salt and pepper, and that's really all there is to it. So I'm going to show you a little clip here of how I made those scapes last night. So I hope that this video gives you some ideas of some of the delicious ways to use your garlic scapes. We have our delicious garlic scape pesto, which I enjoyed with some homemade sourdough bread. And as I confessed to you, I like to put butter on it first. It's very delicious that way. We have our delicious scape powder that will last us all winter long. And you saw the sauteed garlic scapes that we had for dinner last night. So those are all really easy and delicious ways to enjoy your garlic scapes. You definitely do not want to waste this bonus harvest that these scapes give you. And if you needed even more reason to grow garlic, here it is. I mean, garlic is about as easy as it gets, and you get 2 harvests, so what more could you ask for? So I hope you guys are inspired to try growing garlic. If you have any other recipes or ways that you use your garlic scapes, please let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your recipes and your tried and true ways to use them. All right, I'll see you guys soon. I hope you're having a good day. Bye guys, see you later.